Hello everyone, this is part 15 of What If Naruto Was Banished and Becomes Raikage, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to see more comment down. After a minute or so, Minato then lifted his head and looked back at Naruto. Very well Naruto, I understand how you can never forgive me, but please know that regardless of your feelings towards me, know that I still love you and always will. Also know that I am proud of how strong you've become and what you're now, as you have become a far stronger shinobi than I ever was and you've become a far greater leader as well, and I wish you a long and happy life, spoke Minato with a true smile. Before Naruto could even reply to what the Yondaime said, he faded away and found himself standing in the middle of a gigantic crater, which used to be the cleared battlefield that was formed from his attack and in his normal form in the same state that he found himself in when he was the void place. Although this time he had Tengu on his back, with his wind sword handle and the Raijin on his utility belt. Other than the few burns on his body, that were slowly healing, Naruto was relatively unharmed, as the remainder of the Kyuubi's chakra that formed the Kyuubi cloak protected him from the majority of the blast. When Naruto looked down he saw the ashes of the reanimated Yondaime on the ground where it then blew away up into the air from a calm gentle breeze. When Naruto looked up into the sky, where the ashes blew up to, he saw the sun beginning to shine through the storm clouds, as the storm clouds faded away, due to Naruto using all its energy when he did in Azuma. As the storm clouds parted the shine of the sun grew brighter and shone down at him, after which the clear blue sky began to make an appearance. As Naruto continued to look up to the sky with an unreadable look and at the Yondaime ashes, as they blew away to the sky, he suddenly collapsed onto the ground and fell unconscious. As his body could no longer keep him up, as he was completely exhausted after battling for so long and hard and was almost completely drained of chakra. But before he fell unconscious and while he was still looking up in the sky at the blowing ashes of his father, he muttered out two single words, "Damn you," and then blanked out. With the observing groups. After the light of Naruto's attack died down, those nearby could see that the cleared battlefield that was inside the barrier had been turned into one giant crater. Many of course were stunned with the level of destruction that Naruto's final attack had done, also many like Naruto's friends and subordinates grew concerned for Naruto's well-being. But those concerns quickly subsided when they saw a figure standing at the bottom of the crater, where when the dust from the explosion dissipated, they saw that Naruto was the figure standing in the crater. But as soon as those concerns subsided they rose again, when they saw him collapsed onto the ground. As soon as Suafon, Okatsu, Mitsuhide and the others that were holding up the barrier around the cleared battlefield saw this, they quickly deactivated the barrier and jumped down to Naruto and see how his was. They were then soon joined by Zhuge Liang, Kiliabi, Fu, Yugito and the Konoha and Suna groups. When they got to Naruto, they found Suafon kneeling over him with Mitsuhide and Sayuri standing over them, while the others surrounded him and kept guard and watch in case anyone decided to take advantage of Naruto's weakened state. "Is he alright?" asked a concerned Tsunade, as she and the other came up to them. "He's fine, he's just unconscious from exhaustion," replied Suafon, as she lifted her hand from his forehead. At hearing this, Tsunade then stepped forward and walked towards Naruto, but before she could get any closer, Ru and Okatsu stepped in front of her and stopped her from coming any closer to Naruto. "I'm sorry Hokage-san, but you can go no further," spoke Ru politely. "But I'm just going over to help heal him," said Tsunade. "I'm sorry Hokage-san, but we cannot allow any medic that is not from our village, even you, to go near the Raikage," replied Ru. Before Tsunade could respond to this, two teams of storm nins appeared in front of the groups. Upon seeing them, Zhuge Liang stepped forward and took charge. Citrip. Zhuge Liang-sama, the majority of the enemy forces have all but retreated now, there are a few pockets of resistance. But they're being quickly put down and rounded up as we speak, along with the other enemy shinobis that we've captured or have surrendered to us, spoke the leader of the storm group who wore a wolf-shaped mask. Upon hearing this, revealed looks appeared on the faces of most of the Konoha members, as the battle for Konoha was finally over, and they'd won and survived. Very good then, once all resistance has been subdued and the village has been secured, have our shinobis help with the gathering up and care of all those wounded on both sides, is that clear, spoke Zhuge Liang with authority. "Hi. Zhuge Liang-sama," spoke Wolf, as he and his team left to give out Zhu Liang's orders, while the second team remained with them. So you're not only going to help your wounded along with ours, but also the enemies as well, said Kakashi, with surprise, as things such as this were rare, where the victors of any battle rarely showed any mercy to the wounded of the opposing side. Even then, it was mainly given to those who had some worth, such as those who were of some importance or wealthy families and clans, who could be held for ransom, or those who had valuable information. Even in wartime there are rules, Hataki-san, and even if most do not follow those rules, we will, as little human compassion can go along with and making today's enemy your friend tomorrow, answered Zhu Liang. Upon saying this, Zhu Liang then turned to Suafon. Suafon-san, I want you and Yoruichi-san to bring the Raikage to hospital so that he can be treated for whatever injuries that he still may have. At this, Suafon nodded, where with Yoruichi help she picked Naruto up. As she was doing this, Zhu Liang turned to the storm team and spoke to the team leader, who wore a shark-shaped mask. You Shark, I want you and your team to escort Yoruichi-san and Suafon-san to the hospital and make sure that the Raikage arrives there safely. At this, the four storm nins nodded their heads in understanding, after which Suafon and Yoruichi both used their high-speed techniques and sped off towards the hospital, with the storm team following not too far behind. After a few minutes, Suafon and Yoruichi arrived at the hospital, where hundreds of shinobis, from Suna, Konoha, Iwa, Oto, Kusa, New Kumo, the Tsuchigamo clan and the Hanya clan lay on the courtyard, as the hospital, along with the emergency hospital in the Hokage monument, were overflown with injured shinobis, with more coming in. As Suafon and Yoruichi carried Naruto into the hospital to find Unohanaritsu, the head of New Kumo's combat medic Nin Corp and hospital, so that she could look over Naruto, as she was the only one they could trust to care for Naruto. They were suddenly blocked at the entrance by two Konoha Chunins, and a Jonin along with two more Chunins appeared behind Suafon and Yoruichi. When Suafon saw this, she narrowed her eyes angrily, as she wasn't surprised at this and knew why these shinobi were blocking their path. You'll move aside, as we need to get into the hospital now, spoke Yoruichi. We don't take orders from foreign shinobis, especially those who serve under that thing, spat the Jonin, as he indicated at the unconscious Naruto angrily. So is this how the noble village of Konoha treats the person who helped saved it again? Said Suafon with no small measure of disgust at how the shinobis were treating them. That thing doesn't belong here, nor do you. Almost a third of our village has been destroyed by thing alone. All it does is cause destruction and misery for us, so get it out of here, cried the Jonin, and as glared at two women and the unconscious Naruto that they who carrying. And if we don't? Asked Suafon, although she already knew the answer to the question. Then we'll force you out, sneered the Jonin, as he and the Chunins beside him and the two behind Suafon and Yoruichi took out their kunais, indicating that they were serious. At seeing this, Suafon growled, as normally she and Yoruichi could easily take on and deal with these arrogant fools. But as of right now, neither she nor Yoruichi were in any great shape, as they were both worn out from holding the barrier and containing Naruto's power when he was using the Kyuubi's chakra. Not to mention as well, they were holding Naruto, hence fighting these shinobis in the current condition, along with protecting Naruto, was not an ideal situation. Fortunately though for them, they did not have to worry for very long, for as soon as the 5 Konoha shinobis took out their kunais, said shinobis found several blades pointed at their necks. Said blades belonged to the 4 storm shinobis that Zhu Liang sent to watch Suafon and Yoruichi, as they carried the unconscious Naruto to the hospital in case something like this happened. The leader of the storm team, along with 2 of his teammates, were standing directly behind the Jonin and his 2 Chunin partners, with the storm leader Shark holding his katana in a reverse grip at the front of the Jonin's neck, while Shark's teammates held the 2 Chunin in similar positions. At the same time, the 2 Chunins behind Suafon and Yoruichi were being held by the 4th Storm Nin, who stood between the 2 Chunins and held his katana blade at the neck of the Chunin to his right, while he held a kunai blade at the neck of the Chunin on his left. I suggest that you and your friends lower your weapons right now, and slowly, because if you don't, you will not live long enough to regret it, spoke Shark in a dangerous tone of voice. Who the hell are these guys? Thought the Jonin with confusion and disbelief, as he hadn't even sensed the storm nins behind him, nor did any of the others. As this was happening, several Konoha shinobis nearby saw the altercation that was happening and were about to help, although they did not know what was fully going on. But before they could go over to them, they were stopped by a large group of new Kumo shinobis who also saw what was happening and who surrounded the Konoha ninjas and had their weapons pointed at them. Seeing this standoff, many of the medics treating the wounded grew concerned that a fight would break out, where the wounded and them would get caught up in. Luckily though, before things could get any more out of hand, Tsunade, Zhuge Jiraiya and the others arrived. "What the hell is going on here?" cried Tsunade as she saw what was going on. "These men here were refusing to let us in, so to give the Raikage the care he needs," spoke Suafon, angrily, where she used the word men loosely, as she didn't think they were worth even being called men. "Is this true?" asked Tsunade angrily as she glared at the 5 shinobis. "Hokage-sama, you cannot allow that thing into the hospital to be healed," spoke Jonin. When Tsunade and the others heard this, many of them became angry at how the shinobis were treating Naruto, after he helped save the village. "You will let them pass immediately and let Naruto get the care he needs, since if it wasn't for Naruto our village would have been destroyed," spoke Tsunade furiously. "But Hokage-sama, look at what he did to the village, almost a third of it was destroyed because of him, we cannot let him recover, you felt his power earlier, he's a danger to the village," cried one of the Chunins. "I've heard enough, you will do as I say and lower your weapons and let them pass, that is an order," shouted Tsunade in an authoritative tone, showing why she was the Hokage. After hearing their Hokage's order, the shinobi slowly but reluctantly lowered their weapons, where the Storm Nins did the same, when they were given a signal by Mitsuhide to lower their weapons. Once the 5 shinobis lowered their weapons, Tsunade turned to the Konoha ninjas that were surrounded by the new Kumo shinobis and ordered them to do the same, which they did, where the new Kumo shinobis quickly followed suit. Once the situation had calmed down a bit, Tsunade spoke to the Konoha ninjas that were surrounded by the new Kumo shinobis. "You lot, I want you to arrest those 5 shinobis over there for threatening a cage for a foreign village without cause," ordered Tsunade, as attacking the leader of a foreign village without provocation, especially if they weren't at war with said village, was a high crime in any shinobi village and was extremely close to treason. "You but Hokage-sama if we," spoke a Jonin, but before he could finish he was interrupted by Tsunade. "That's an order," cried Tsunade angrily as leak killing intent and glared at the man, who gulped, but nodded in understanding, where he and his men went to the 5 shinobis. When the 5 shinobis heard this they thought about resisting, but that thought quickly faded, for as if reading their minds, Zhuge spoke up, "I wouldn't try resisting if I were you gentlemen, because if you try, you will be killed on the spot, as the storm shinobis next to you will not hesitate to kill you. As they would be well in their rights to do so, as you did threaten our shinobis and our Raikage." After hearing this, the 5 shinobis gave up without a fight and were taken away, as they knew this was a no-win situation for them, given who they were up against. As the shinobis were taken away, Tsunade planned to deal with them later on, where she would have them stripped of their ranks and have their chakra sealed and spend the next 8 months in Konoha's strict correctional facility. After the situation was dealt with, Suafon and Yoruichi along with the rest of the new Kumo group entered the hospital, to find Ritsu and get Naruto the care he needed. Operation Clean Sweep. At the same time as the Battle of Konoha was raging, another battle was about to begin at a coastal fortress and port belonging to Kiri off the northern part of the Mizu no Kuni water country. Currently stationed at the fort were about 300 Kiri shinobis along with about 25 of their ships, which was the remaining part of the Grand Fleet that stayed behind to help protect their country. The fort itself was built atop a large cliffside that overlooked the sea and coast. It had strong walls and high towers and battlements, where the fortress's cannons, volley guns and ballistas could easily fire at any incoming ship or group of ships. Below the fortress was a large dock that housed the remaining Kiri ships, that remained behind to help protect the country. The dock was built within the coastal causeway below the fortress. Less than a mile away from the fortress was also a base camp, which belonged to the Mizu Daimyo, which held about 1,500 of his soldiers and about 300 of his samurai. As a few Kiri guards were looking out towards the horizon looking out for any arriving ships, several of them were discussion about the battle was no doubt happening at this moment. Many of the shinobis were expressing wishes that they could have gone and joined the Mizukage and the main force in their attack on Konoha, as they were all certain that they would win this war, considering the force that Konoha and Tsunade was up against. The shinobis had wanted to go in the hopes of earning fame and glory at the battle, along with boasting to others that they took part in the battle that destroyed the once mighty Konoha. As the shinobis talked amongst themselves, some of them heard a sounds of something large falling, after which there was a large crashing sound with something hitting the ground hard and shattering. When the shinobis looked out to the fortress courtyard, they saw hundreds of large ice spikes falling to the ground and all around the fortress and the dock, sinking several ships, when the ice spikes hit them and causing many Kiri shinobis to scatter and run for cover. "Look out!" cried a kunoichi, as she had the other shinobis duck underneath the window, so to avoid the thousands of ice shards that flew through the open window from a large ice spike, that fell from the sky and onto a nearby battlement and shattered into thousands of pieces. For the next few minutes the bombardment of falling ice spikes fell down on the fortress and the port. When the bombardment began, the commander of the fortress immediately ordered the siren to sound, alerting everyone that they were under attack. Soon after, the bombardment of ice spikes ended, after which the water at the dock began to recede. When Kiri shinobis in fortress saw the bombardment had ended, they looked up to the sky and then to the sea, where they saw the water at the dock receding into the sea, after which they saw a single man wearing a white coat and long white hair that fell down his back, floating in the sky. "Who the hell is that guy?" asked one shinobi. "Could he be the one that attacked us?" asked another shinobi. As the Kiri shinobis looked towards the man, they saw the man do several hand seals, where when he finished a giant tsunami wave appeared and headed straight towards the dock and the fortress. Seeing the giant tsunami heading for them, the shinobis quickly headed into the main part of the fortress and bolted the doors and the windows shut, hoping to withstand the giant tsunami wave. Those that were below at the dock quickly ran up the narrow path that lead up to the fortress in hope of escaping the wave. Sadly though, as the wave got closer, those inside the fortress closed the gates shut, locking out any others that could not get into the fortress in time. Soon after the wave hit the dock and the fortress, completely destroying the fleet at the dock and the dock itself, where anyone that remained there drowned. When the wave hit the fortress, it completely enveloped it, where anyone that remained outside it, suffered the same fate as those below at the dock. The fortress itself survived the wave along with most of those that were in it, but even still, many that were inside it were severely wounded when the wave was able to burst through the windows of the fortress and flooding large parts of the fortress. When the tsunami wave blast through, the water then began to freeze, covering the fortress in ice, and freezing the shinobis inside the fortress in, with the doors and windows covered in a thick ice and unable to get out. With the fortress now frozen and covered in ice, the white-cloaked man then used Kirigaku no Jutsu, art of hiding in the mist, to cover the entire horizon in a thick mist. An hour or so after the attack, the shinobis trapped within the fortress were able to free themselves, where they were then joined by the Mizu Daimyo's forces, that were based a mile away from the fortress. When the two forces joined together, the fortress came under attack by cannon fire. The few remaining shinobis inside the fortress of course tried to use the weapons inside the fortress, but most of the cannons, volley guns and ballistas, were either destroyed by the tsunami or were froze by the ice. Even with the few remaining weapons that still somehow worked, the shinobis couldn't target their cannons or other weapons, as the mist hid the location and number of the enemy ships. Soon after, the remaining shinobis in the fortress abandoned their position, as after several minutes of constant firing from the unknown ships, the fortress quickly became undefendable. After which the shinobis, along with the samurai and the soldiers belonging to the Mizu Daimyo, quickly fell back to the nearby tree line for cover, and to have a view of the flat beachhead on the left-hand side of the fortress. Since given the attack on the fortress, it was obvious that this was the beginning of some kind of invasion by some unknown nation. Soon after, the bombardment on the fortress stopped and the mist began to clear, but when it did, the eyes of every shinobi, samurai and soldiers there widened to the size of plates, as instead of seeing a fleet of enemy ships, they saw an entire armada of over 700 ships of every size imaginable. The most notable things about this armada was that it was being led by the Raikage's fortress ship and flagship of New Kumo's fleet, the Zenyo Ruo. Along with the Zenyo Ruo were 4 other fortress ships and flanked it in AV formation. The other most notable thing about the armada was that these ships did not all belong to New Kumo, as the armada was made up of several other nations that belonged to the Heavenly Alliance. Judging by the flags on the ships of the armada was made up of ships from New Kumogaku, Hidden Cloud, Yukigaku, Hidden Snow, Shimo no Kuni, Frost Country, Shimogaku, Hidden Frost, Yuki, Haru no Kuni, Snow, Spring Country, Yu no Kuni, Hot Spring Country, and Kaminari no Kuni, Lightning Country. 3 of the 4 other fortress ships had the flags of Yuki no Kuni on them, while last remaining one had the flag of Yukigaku. On board the Zenyo Ruo. Currently standing on the forward deck of the Zenyo Ruo, the commander of New Kumo's fleet and leader of the armada Gan Ning was waiting for the supreme commander of this invasion, Seiwa Anasu. Gan did not have to wait long, as Anasu soon floated down from the sky and deactivated his wind-flying technique. Anasu wore a black sleeveless shirt, with black shinobi pants and wore black boots, with steel tips at its toes and heels, as well as wore a white trench with the kanji symbol for frost on its back, with blue snowflake on the edges of the trench coat. He also had a green sash around his shoulders, held together by a round clip. The sash held his long sword sheath in place on his back and is tied to it at either end. His sword was called Hyolinmaru. Its blade was about 1.4 meters long with the exception of the guard, which is in the shape of a four-pointed bronze-colored star. Hey Anasu. Great work on the fortress and the port, as it make our job a lot easier, spoke Gan. Not a problem, so are the landing forces ready? Asked Anasu. Yep. The first wave is lock, stock and ready to go, they're just waiting for the go-ahead from us, replied Gan. Good, as today we are about to free our former homeland from tyranny of the Godai Mizukage and the Mizu Daimyo, spoke Anasu. Yay, this day been a long time coming, replied Gan, where he then placed his hand on his sword Leviathan. Seeing this, Anasu smiled, knowing that Gan was inching to part of the first wave, as Gan hated to be out of a good fight. Then by all means my friend, do not let me delay you any longer, spoke Anasu, giving him the go-ahead to join the first wave. Hearing this, Gan smiled and gave Anasu a nod of thanks, before he quickly left and boarded one of the landing boats. Street Fighter Score OST. Coronel Guile addresses the troops 114-249. After a few minutes, several dozen medium-sized versions of the fortress ships moved forward towards the beach. The ships soon landed on the beach and opened up their fronts, revealing landing platforms, after which hundreds of shinobis from New Kumo, Shimo and Yuki, along with hundreds of samurai and soldiers from Yuki Haru no Kuni, Shimo no Kuni, Yu no Kuni and Kaminari no Kuni charged out of the ships and onto the beach. 1. Seeing the enemy forces landing, the Mizu no Kuni water country, soldiers and samurai, along with the Kiri shinobis charged out of the tree line and towards the Heavenly Alliance forces, hoping to head off the invading forces, and prevent them from gaining a foothold on the beach and drive them back. When Gan saw the Kiri and Mizu no Kuni forces charging towards them from the tree line, he immediately took charge of the forces that landed. Come you lot, let's rock and roll, cried Gan, where he charged straight at the charging enemy with his men. Within seconds the two forces clashed with each other in a fierce battle on the beach, with both sides struggling to drive the other back. For a while the battle remained in a deadlock, with both sides battling furiously with one another. Eventually though, the battle turned in favor of the Heavenly Alliance force, as the Kiri and Mizu no Kuni forces were unable to drive the Heavenly Alliance forces back, where more Alliance landing ships landed and more Alliance reinforcements arrived to join the fight. Eventually the Heavenly Alliance forces drove them back, where the remaining Kiri and Mizu no Kuni forces were forced to retreat. End Street Fighter Score OST. Coronel Guile addresses the troops 114-249. After securing the beachhead and the fortress, the main body of the Heavenly Alliance invasion force began to land, and move on with their invasion. At the same time that the northern part of Mizu no Kuni was being invaded, the second southern fleet of Mizu no Kuni was making its patrol of the southern region of their country. As the fleet was sailing, a crewman in the crow's nest of the command ship suddenly spotted a large armada of ships heading towards them. Admiral, sir. Unknown ships on the port side, cried the crewman. When the admiral of the fleet turned to where the crewman was pointing to, he could see the figures of a large number of ships heading into the direction, but couldn't tell who the ships belonged to. Can you tell who the ships belong to? Cried the admiral. At this, the crewman looked through his eyeglass, trying to get a better look at the flags of the ship. There he saw that the armada didn't belong to one nation but to several. Well, cried the admiral, sir, the armada is made up of ships from several nations. The ships are from Getsugaku, hidden under the moon, Kaminari no Kuni, Cha no Kuni, Tea country, Tsuki no Kuni, moon country, New Kumo, Umi no Kuni, sea country. The admiral was of course shocked at hearing this, as he knew what this meant: New Kumo, Kaminari no Kuni and Cha no Kuni. That means that the Heavenly Alliance is involved and is invading us. Also, if that is case, then that means that Tsuki no Kuni, Umi no Kuni and Getsugaku have indeed joined the Heavenly Alliance, thought the admiral. As he had heard rumors about those countries joining the Heavenly Alliance, but didn't know they were true or not. How many ships are there? Asked the admiral, wanting to know what he was up against. For a moment or two the crewman didn't answer, but before Admiral could ask again the crewman final spoke. About 500 ships, sir, replied a worried crewman. After hearing the crewman's answer, the Mizu no Kuni admiral immediately had his men signal the other ships to turn around and to get into battle formation. As he knew they were outnumbered 5-1 and needed to fall into a defensive position, before the Heavenly Alliance fleet could hit them. Quickly the Mizu no Kuni fleet fell into battle formation, where when the fleet fell into position, the 4 fortress ships with Kaminari no Kuni flags, that were leading the armada, then moved forward in front of the Alliance fleet. The fortress ships then fell into a diamond formation and headed straight for the Mizu no Kuni fleet. As the fortress ships came into firing range for the Mizu no Kuni fleet, they opened fire and let loose barrage of projections at the fortress ships. Unfortunately for them, the projections did little damage to the fortress ships, as they were much stronger and could take a great deal of damage. The fortress ships continued to move forward right towards the fleet, without slowing down in the slightest, where they then plowed right through the Mizu no Kuni fleet, smashing through the smaller warships that got in their way and destroyed them like they were nothing. Once the fortress ships had reached the center of the fleet, the fortress ships opened up all the gun ports on both sides and the ones in front and behind. After which they fired all their cannons and let loose a massive bombardment upon the enemy fleet. Within minutes the entire Mizu no Kuni second fleet was destroyed by the 4 fortress ships. With the Mizu no Kuni fleet dealt with, the rest of the Heavenly Alliance armada caught up with the fortress ships, where all that was left was to gather up the survivors of the fleet. Since with the Mizu no Kuni second fleet dealt with, there wasn't another force in the area that could stop or interfere with their invasion of Mizu no Kuni from the south and join up with the force from the north later on. Within the next few hours, several thousand new Kumo and Getsugaku shinobis, along with thousands of samurai and soldiers from Umi no Kuni, Cha no Kuni, Suki no Kuni and Kaminari no Kuni landed on the nearby beachhead and began to move out to begin their invasion of Mizu no Kuni and Kirigaku. 3 days later at the Mizu Daimyo Palace. Currently sitting in his grand palace on his high throne, the Mizu Daimyo Fujiwara Oshu was surrounded by several beautiful young girls, laughing drunkenly and having the girls serve him sake. Oshu was a rather plump man, who enjoyed living a life of luxury, such as having extravagant food, as well as having extravagant clothes, jewelry and decor, along with having many beautiful young girls surround him and having his way with them. He cared little for his people or for anyone else, as he left most of his duties to others or did nothing about them whatsoever, as he preferred to ignore such matters. As he was enjoying his private little party, the 2 great doors that lead to the throne suddenly opened up, where several soldiers entered the room and were being led by the samurai general of the Mizu no Kuni army, Uesugi Kenshin. Uesugi Kenshin was the most famed and revered samurai general in all of Mizu no Kuni, where he was known by many people throughout the elemental continent, as the Senso no Kami, the god of war, due to his great tactical and fighting skills in battle. Kenshin was also the clan head of the strongest and most noble samurai clan in all of Mizu no Kuni, the Uesugi clan. He was also famed for wielding a special sword that allowed him to do ice techniques similar to the Hyoten uses of Kiri, although not on the same level as them. When Oshu saw Kenshin and his soldiers enter the throne room, he stood up from his throne and the girls and walked towards the samurai general. Kenshin, what is the meaning of this? Why have you interrupted me when I occupied with important matters of state? My apologies, my lord, but I've important news that you must hear, spoke Kenshin respectfully. Well, whatever it is, I sure you can take care of it, as I'm a busy man, Kenshin, and I do not have time to deal with trivial matters, spoke the Mizu Daimyo dismissively, as he didn't wish to be bothered. I'm afraid that the matter, to which I speak of, needs your attention, my lord, spoke Kenshin calmly and politely. Then what is it? Cried Oshu, as he was tempted to send Kenshin to the dungeons for disturbing him, regardless of how popular he was with the common people and the army. It seems that we're being invaded, my lord, said Kenshin calmly. At hearing this, the Mizu Daimyo dropped the fan he was holding in shock. We're being invaded. Spoke the shocked Daimyo, where Kenshin just nodded. By who? It seems by the Heavenly Alliance and its allies, where in the north an armada of over 700 ships has landed and destroyed Kiri's northern fortress and their remaining ships at dock there. In the south another armada belonging to the Heavenly Alliance landed at the same time, as in the north, and has destroyed all 100 ships of the southern Second Fleet. Both forces have landed armies which are moving with phenomenal speed, spoke Kenshin. Why am I only hearing this now? Cried the furious Daimyo. I'm afraid that the rebel factions have been cutting all our lines of communications and intercepting our messengers, which is why we have only heard this now, replied Kenshin. Then what are you doing here just talking? Assemble our armies, and gather our forces to face them and drive them into the sea, roared the now worried Daimyo. I'm afraid that too is impossible, for as I said the rebel factions have cut off most of our lines of communication and we cannot make contact with most of our forces throughout the country. The few messengers that have gotten through have informed us that most of our bases, fortresses, castle and other forces are currently all under attack by the rebel factions at this moment and need support. While others reports say that many of the main roads and bridges have been blocked or been destroyed, where our few remaining free forces cannot help us or the others, answered Kenshin. Then send word to Kiri, and have the reaming shinobi forces, that Shiro left there, help us. Said Oshu. I'm regret to report to you, my lord, that as of yesterday afternoon Kiri has fallen to the combined forces of the shinobi villages of the Heavenly Alliance and the shinobi rebel factions, spoke Kenshin calmly. What? But how? Cried the worried Mizu Daimyo, as he had always depended greatly of Kiri and Shiro's support in keeping control of his country, and keeping the rebel forces in check. It seems that at the same time as the two-prong invasion began, there was an uprising of the majority of the civilian population in the village, as well as an attack by the shinobi rebel factions. Despite the surprise attack the force that the Mizukage left there were able to hold them back. But the rebels were then quickly joined by the shinobis of New Kumo, Yuki, Shimo and Getsu, where with their help they quickly defeated the Mizukage's forces, and took control of the village. Along with that, over half the country has already fallen to the Heavenly Alliance forces, where the two armies have joined with a large force of rebels, and they're marching here as we speak, said Kenshin. The rebels have allied themselves with the Heavenly Alliance. Spoke the Mizu Daimyo with surprise, where Kenshin just nodded. When Oshu heard this, he was on the verge of having a panic attack, as his whole world was crumbling around him. Then man the defensive, have your forces and the city guard prepare for a siege, we can hold out until Shiro-kun's and his forces return from destroying Konoha. I'm afraid that too is impossible, my lord, as the enemy army has already sent a vanguard ahead of itself, and is at outgates, while the main enemy army is less than a mile away from the city. Hence we do not have sufficient time to put up any kind of defiance, my lord, replied Kenshin. Then we must flee immediately. Quickly, Kenshin, you and your men must help me gather as much of my treasures as you all can carry, and take the fastest ship out of here. Cried the panic-stricken overweight Daimyo. But what about the people, my lord? Asked Kenshin calmly, as if not worried about the current situation. The people, who cares about those lowly commoners? They exist only to serve us, they do not matter, the only thing that matters is me, so hurry up and let us flee this place. Cried Oshu. I'm afraid that it is already too late for that as well, my lord, spoke Kenshin, with a slight smile, where he snapped his finger to signal his men, where the soldier around him and the Mizu Daimyo all pointed their swords and spears at the Mizu Daimyo. Kenshin, what is the meaning of this? Cried Oshu with confusion and fear, whereupon seeing this, the young girls that were serving the Daimyo sake quickly ran out of the throne room with fear. I believe that it would be quite oblivious, my lord. We're taking over, my lord, as my clansmen along with soldiers that are loyal to me, have already taken control of the palace, as well as the capital itself, and are preparing to hand it to the Heavenly Alliance army, so no more blood need be shed, spoke Kenshin. This is sedition. Cried Oshu. Sedition usually happens, when the world needs to change, my lord, spoke Kenshin, where he then drew his katana out. WWWH, what are you doing? Spoke the frightened man. I believe that too would be obvious, my lord, with every revolution, the leader of the previous ruling government will always die in a gruesome death, such as being torn apart piece by an angry mob, or by wild animals. But that will not happen, as our country has seen enough of such things, so I shall do the deed myself and make it quick and clean. Wait, Lord Kenshin, I can give you money, women, gold, anything you could want, just please do kill me. There is still so much I haven't done yet, so many foods I've not eaten, so many women I have not pleasured yet, so please don't kill me, I'm not ready to die yet. Begged the whimpering Daimyo, but Kenshin ignored the man's pleas. All the wealth in the world cannot buy off the blood that has been split because of you, Lord Oshu, because of your greed, corruption, selfishness and lust. Our people have suffered endless amount of bloodshed and live in constant fear and poverty, and our country has been torn apart by conflict and turmoil. While you feed your endless hunger for money, women and food and turn a blind eye to our people's suffering. You say that the common people exist to serve us, but that is where you're wrong. We exist to serve them, as without the common people, our country would not exist. It is our duty to lead and protect the people of our country, and you've abused that duty and responsibility for too long, and have brought our country to near ruin, spoke Kenshin coldly. After Kenshin said this, Oshu was on his knees begging for his life, saying he was sorry and that he would do anything to make up for it. But Kenshin knew that the man didn't mean a word he said, as all he ever cared about was himself, where he then raised his blade. Where with one quick clean swipe of his katana, he cut the daimyo's head off, where it fell onto the floor and rolled a few feet away from his body, which fell to ground right after the head. After severing the Mizu daimyo's head, Kenshin flicked the blood off his katana, after which he then sheathed his katana and his men lowered their weapons. As soon as Kenshin sheathed his blade, a young kunoichi appeared. She had long blonde hair, tied into 2 long pigtails, which fell down below her rear. She wore a skin-tight kunoichi outfit that showed her entire figure. It also had a spit down the middle her front and went down just above her waist, where it slightly revealed her C-cup breast and stomach. 3. The kunoichi's name was Kasuga, and loyal vassal to Kenshin and his clan. Kasuga was a former kunoichi from a small shinobi village, who was sent to assassinate Kenshin. But instead of killing him, she fell in love with him, where she was banished from her village for failing in her mission. Later on, she was allowed to join Kenshin clan as a loyal vassal and servant to him. Kenshin-sama, our forces have complete control of the capital, and the main force of the Heavenly Alliance has been sighted from the distance and should be here within the next hour or so, spoke Kasuga, and she bowed to her lord. It seems that the Raikage plan has indeed worked perfectly, as everything went exactly as he said it would, spoke Kenshin with a smile. As with the Mizu Daimyo now dead and the capital under their control, Mizu no Kuni was now theirs, and all remaining resistance would quickly crumble once it was announced. Kasuga, please go inform the Alliance vanguard at the gate, that the Mizu Daimyo is dead and we're in control of the capital, spoke Kenshin with a kind smile. Hi Kenshin-sama, spoke Kasuga with a large blush, when Kenshin smiled at her, after which she then shunshed bod flicker away. Once Kasuga left, Kenshin ordered his men to follow him to the gate of the capital, so that he would meet the commander of the Alliance invasion army, who was also formerly of Kirigakure and the right-hand man of the Raikage, Seiwa Anasu, or as the people of Kiri and his own people were now calling Kurosui no Kami, the god of ice and water, due to his enormous skill and power in water and ice ninjutsu. As Kenshin was walking out of the throne room, he thought about the events that happened in the past few days, all because of one man, and how much his country and the rest of the elemental continent would change as well, in the next few days to come. All because of that man. I look forward to the day that we finally meet in person, Uzumaki Naruto, Rokudaime Raikage of New Kumo. With Operation Judgment. At the same time as the Battle of Konoha and the invasion of Mizu no Kuni and Kiri, another invasion was about to begin, this time in Ta no Kuni, Ricefield country, where 2 armies crossed the border between Yu no Kuni and Ta no Kuni. The first army was made up entirely of shinobis, while the second and much larger army was made up of samurai and regular soldiers. The shinobi invasion force was led by Ishida Rukan clan, head of the Ishida clan, while samurai and regular force was led by Naomasa son of Naomasa Katsumoto, Lady Daimyo Kicho's Kenjutsu sensei and bodyguard. The invasion was made up of the combined forces of New Kumo, Kaminari no Kuni, Yu no Kuni and Yugakure Hidden Hot Spring. The shinobi army quickly took care of the lightly guarded outposts belonging to the Ta no Kuni and Otogakure, Hidden Sound, before any of them could send word about the Heavenly Alliance invasion. Both armies, then separated from one another, so to follow their own separate objectives. At the same time as the invasion, several large revolts erupted in Ta no Kuni, where several shinobi clans who had been used and persecuted by Orochimaru and his forces revolted, and were led by the Fuma clan and its clan head Hanzaki. Also at the same time, several other large revolts erupted, this time led by the Ta daimyo's nephew Prince Mochi, who had seen how Orochimaru took control of his homeland and used it and his people for his own means. He also saw how his uncle had now become a puppet ruler of Ta no Kuni, which was why the Oto shinobis referred to it as Oto no Kuni, Sound Country. He then secretly gathered those who were like-minded as him and wanted to free their homeland. After which, they then secretly gathered forces and waited for the right time to stage their revolt. Thanks to being secretly allied with the Fuma clan, the Heavenly Alliance forces knew the locations of all of Orochimaru's secret bases, inside Ta no Kuni, where they were then able to make coordinated assaults on the bases, and easily overwhelmed and took over each of the bases before any of them could send a warning to any of the other bases. They did the same thing with the Oto no Kuni fortresses, bases, castles, thanks to Prince Mochi secretly allying with them. Day after the Battle of Konoha, outside Orochimaru's main base. Rukan-sama, our men are in position and are waiting for you signal, spoke a new Kumo Jonin. Very well, proceed as planned, spoke Rukan in a monotone voice. Hi, replied the Jonin, before he disappeared into the trees. A few minutes later, 100 or so new Kumo shinobis charged into the underground entrance to Orochimaru main base. A few minutes after entering Orochimaru's main base, the new Kumo shinobis came into contact with some of the shinobi guards left in the base, where they then fought with them. Soon after, several explosions were felt throughout the base. These explosions were caused by the roofs of the underground base being blown up and large holes appearing in them, where several hundred more new Kumo shinobis jumped into the holes made into the roofs and made their way throughout the base attacking any Oto shinobis they saw. Damn it, these new Kumo bastards are everywhere, spoke an Oto Jonin to himself, as he fought two new Kumo Chunins by himself, and dodged some shurikens they threw at him. After dodging the shurikens, the Oto Jonin then saw a group of Oto shinobis coming towards him from a hallway from his left side. Seeing them coming towards him, the Jonin smiled at seeing reinforcements arriving. Over here you guys, now help me take care of these new Kumo trash, spoke the Jonin, after which the group of Oto shinobis stood next to the Jonin. But before the Jonin could give out any orders to the Oto shinobis, one of them took out a kunai and stabbed him the stomach. Surprised at what happened, the Oto Jonin looked at the Oto shinobi that stabbed him. WWWH what, said the Jonin as he stared at the Oto nin that stabbed him in shock, but as he stared at him he saw that the headbands of the group of Oto nins were all slashed. Why, you traitors, spoke the Jonin before he fell to the ground and died. Thanks for assistance, spoke one of the new Kumo Chunins. You're welcome, my clansmen, and I've waited for this day a long time. Now at last the Fuma clan can finally avenge itself, spoke the now former Oto nin. So is everything going as planned? Asked the other new Kumo Chunin. Hi, some of our other clansmen are helping your people as we speak, and the rest of our clan are doing their parts at the other bases, asked another now revealed Fuma ninja. Good, then let's finish this battle and finish off Orochimaru forces here, for good, said the first new Kumo Chunin, where the Fuma ninjas nodded in agreement and then took off. Later on in Orochimaru's throne room, the commander of the base was trying to figure what was exactly happening. From the few reports he got, he knew they were being attacked by new Kumo shinobis, along with a few Yu shinobis as well. As he was looking over a map of the base, with a few other senior Oto ninjas, and Oto Chunin quickly entered the room. What is it? Asked the Oto commander. Sir, over 2/3 of the base has fallen to the enemy, where the north and west wings have fallen to the enemy, and over half the east wing has just fallen, spoke the Chunin. Impossible, how can they navigate through the base so quickly, and how can they be taking it so easily, spoke the commander in surprise. As even with their few numbers, the alliance force should be having a much harder time, especially with the base's traps. I believe it is because of the Fuma clan, as well as several of the other shinobi clans, who have betrayed us, are helping the enemy shinobis by telling them where to go. They're also most likely telling them how to avoid the base's traps and are attacking our own shinobis, spoke the Chunin. Damn those traitors, said the commander as he slammed his fist on the table with the map of the base. But before he could say anything else, there was a sudden large explosion, which blew up the wall in front of them. When they looked up, they saw a tall man with short white hair, glasses, wearing a long white trench coat and holding a strange bow connected to a glove on his arm, with an arrow made out of chakra strung on it and aimed at him. The man in question was none other than Ishida Rukan. Who the hell are you? Cried the Oto commander in shock. Your executor if you don't surrender now, spoke Rukan coldly. At this, the Oto commander just narrowed his eyes and went to take up one of his kunai from his pouch. But before he could, a chakra arrow from Rukan pierced the commander's head, killing him instantly, before he could even touch his kunai. Seeing this, the other Oto nins quickly looked back at Rukan, who had another chakra arrow strung and ready to fire and aimed at the Oto nins in the room. If you do not wish to end up like your leader, I suggest that you surrender now and not try what he just did. At hearing Rukan's threat, some of the Oto nins did not know what to do. A few of them were even tempted to rush him all at once, believing that he couldn't get them all, but any thought of resisting was quickly set aside. When 4 squads of new Kumo and Yu shinobis arrived next to Rukan, after which they quickly surrendered. As the Oto nins were being taken away as prisoner, a bold nin with a bear-shaped mask appeared in front of Rukan. Report, ordered Rukan in a commanding tone. Sir, I'm here to report that all of Orochimaru's bases in Ta no Kuni have been taken and his remaining forces have been subdued. Also Naomasiri and his force have taken the capital of Ta no Kuni, with the assistance of Prince Mochi and his forces. They also have captured the Ta Daimyo, and as of officially now, Ta no Kuni is under our control, reported Bear. Very good, now have our forces moved towards the border between Ta no Kuni and Hai no Kuni, Fire Country, so that we can give Orochimaru and his forces a proper greeting when they return from Konoha, spoke Rukan. Hi, replied the bear, where he then shunshin away, after which Rukan and the remaining other new Kumo shinobis left the base to continue with the next phase of Naruto's plan. Operation Tidal Wave. Like the other operation, at the same time as the Battle of Konoha, Operation Tidal Wave was about to begin. But unlike the other operations, this wasn't an invasion, this was a strike operation. The operation was led Sun Li, the commander of New Kumo's submarine fleet and Aqua Division. The operation was taking place in the Northern Sea, which lay between Tsuchi no Kuni and Kaminari no Kuni. The operation objective was simple, they were to attack all 3 of Iwa's and Tsuchi no Kuni military docks and destroy their fleets, along with the shipbuilding yards. This was in response of the Heavenly Alliance attack on the anti-Konoha coalition during the Battle of Konoha. As with their fleet taken out, Iwa would be unable to make any kind invasion or attack on Kaminari no Kuni, when news of their intervention in the Battle of Konoha reached Iwa from the retreating Iwa forces. As with Iwa and Tsuchi no Kuni naval power destroyed, the Northern Sea would be under the complete control of the Heavenly Alliance. Inside her command sub, the Swordfish, Sun Li, was going over last-minute check-up, before the attack began. As soon as she had finished her check-ups, a crewman came up to her to report, Sun Li Takeo, Captain, all ships in our fleet report that they are ready, along with all Aqua Squad members, also fleets 2 and 3 report that they are all ready as well. Very well then, inform all ships and Aqua Squad members that Operation Tidal Wave is a go, responded Sun Li, where the crewman nodded and went to inform the other ships and the Aqua Squad members on the radio. Within minutes of the order being given, 10 new Kumo submarines emerged from the water, less than 100 meters away from the enemy dock, where they revealed their hatches to open up the volley guns. After which they let loose a massive bombardment of exploding kunai, down on the shipyards, destroying warships under construction or being repaired, along with many hangars that housed ships under construction. At the same as that, Aqua Shinobis from the submarines quickly swam towards the docked ships, and planted waterproof exploding notes underneath the hull of the ships, where once they were far enough away, they activated the notes caused them to explode and the ships to sink, as massive holes caused by the explosions appeared, filling the ships with water. The bombardment continued for several minutes, causing massive destruction on the enemy docks, once the docks had been completely leveled and the ships all sunk. Sun Li ordered her fleet of submarines to cease fire and to return underwater, as well as order her Aqua Squad members to return to the submarines. Once the Aqua members returned to the ships, Sun Li then gave the order to the other submarines to return back to base. After she gave out her order, a young female Aqua member came up to her and saluted to her. Sun Li Takeo, we accomplished and sank all enemy ships, as ordered. Good work Isaribi, spoke Sun Li, where she smiled at the young woman, who was about the same age as her. Isaribi was a friend of Naruto and Anasu, who they had helped save during their travels with their senseis, Mitsuhide and Sayuri, from a former scientist belonging to Orochimaru named Amaki, who had experimented on her and turned her into a humanoid fish. After defeating Amaki, Naruto and the others then brought her to Ritsu, who they'd also met earlier on in their travels, and asked her to help Isaribi, which she did, where after some time Ritsu was able to cure Isaribi. Although was unable to fully remove everything that Amaki had done, where she could produce gills at her neck at will to breath underwater, as well as make her feet and hands web-like at will, along with being able to move quickly underwater and have scales at will, that helped protect her body. But even with these abilities she was still able to remain in more human-like form, and no longer changed in her Kaima form. After being cured, Isaribi stayed with Ritsu and traveled with her and became her assistant, hoping to repay Ritsu for helping her. When Naruto became Raikage, she joined New Kumo along with Ritsu, where she was finally able to find acceptance, and even eventually married Anasu, who like Naruto was required to marry multiple times, since he was the last holder of his clan's bloodline. She was also asked by Naruto later on, if she would be willing to join Aqua, where her skills and abilities would be of great value, which she agreed to and became Sun Li's second in command in the Aqua division. After Sun Li had congratulated Isaribi for her good work, another crewman appeared next to them, where he then spoke, Sun Li Takeo, I just received word for the other submarine fleets at the remaining other enemy dock. They report that they have all succeeded in destroying the other two remaining docks and the fleet stationed there, with the exception of a few ships that went out on patrol when they attack, but adding with the results with our own attack, with the others. We can confirm that we achieved 97% of our target objectives. Very good, inform all other ships to return to base, ordered Sun Li, after which the crewman nodded and went to give out Sun Li orders to the rest of the crew, where the submarine fleet sailed back to their base. 3 days after the Battle of Konoha, with Orochimaru currently running through the forest of Hai no Kuni, the former White Snake of Konoha, was racing back to Oto, along with his right-hand man Kabuto, along with his remaining followers. Out of his entire force that he sent to invade Konoha, only about 10% of his original force had managed to escape Konoha and avoid being captured or killed. As Orochimaru ran, he went over what had happened and what he had seen only a few days ago. As he thought about the events at the Battle of Konoha, he still tried to figure how his plan failed so miserably. As it had been perfect, he had thought of everything except for one miserable brat, who just wouldn't die. When Orochimaru thought of Naruto, he could not help but growl in anger, where a part of him still could not believe that Naruto of all people had become as powerful as he did, let alone that he would possess the power of the legendary Ranba Cart Stormbreaker limit. He also could not believe how much of the Kyuubi's power that he could control. Even though he had not seen it, he and Kabuto had felt Naruto using its power when they were escaping the village, which didn't make Orochimaru feel any better. In fact, it made him feel worse, as he knew that Naruto had not used all of the Kyuubi's power. Blast that cursed brat, I make him pay dearly for interfering with my plans again, thought Orochimaru, as he and his remaining forces crossed the border between Ta no Kuni and Hai no Kuni. But soon after crossing the border, several Oto nins in the front were blown apart by a large explosion. At the same time as well, several more Oto nins were killed when several arrows made out of chakra pierced their chest. Also as well, several dozen kunais and jutsus were being fired from all directions at the Oto force. What is going on? Thought Orochimaru, where he saw his already decimated force being attacked again by unknown force. His question was soon answered, when 200 new Kumo shinobis appeared and surrounded them, where he attacked Orochimaru forces. Within minutes Orochimaru forces were being picked apart by the new Kumo shinobis. New Kumo, but how? Thought Orochimaru in surprise, as he knew that he was in his own territory now and couldn't understand what the new Kumo shinobis were doing here. Orochimaru-sama, cried Kabuto, as he disabled a new Kumo Chunin and raced towards his master. Orochimaru-sama, we must escape while we still can, we cannot win here. Orochimaru of course knew Kabuto was right, but it didn't mean he liked it. What the blazes happened here? Cried Orochimaru in frustration. I would believe that would already be obvious, spoke Rukan, as he appeared with several bolt nins who surrounded Orochimaru and Kabuto. Who the devil are you? Asked Orochimaru angrily. The person who helped conquer your country, spoke Rukan as he then extended his bow glove and charged a chakra arrow into his bow and aimed it at Orochimaru's head. What? Cried the snake Sannin in disbelief, as he did not believe what he just heard. Rukan of course ignored Orochimaru's question, as he knew the snake Sannin heard him, where he just aimed his chakra arrow at Orochimaru's head, and prepared to fire it. You will surrender now Orochimaru, or you will die where you stand now, spoke Rukan, with a calm cool deadly tone of voice. While at the same time the bolts nins took out their katanas and channeled their lightning chakra through them, and prepared to attack. Kukukaku, I think not, said Orochimaru with a sinister-looking smirk, where he and Kabuto charged straight at Rukan, who quickly fired several chakra arrows and hit them, both between the eyes. But instead of falling dead, both turned into mud, revealing that they were Tsuchibunshin Earth clones, where the real Kabuto and Orochimaru used Haru Bansho, Boku no Jutsu, leech all creation, attack prevention technique to merge with the ground and sank into it to escape. Although as he did, he silently swore to himself, that he would never lose to Naruto or the Heavenly Alliance again and that he would make Naruto pay severely for defeating him again. Seeing that Orochimaru and Kabuto escaped, Rukan narrowed his eyes with annoyance, but quickly got over it, where a new Kumo Jonin then appeared next to him. "Sir, I like to report that we have eliminated over half the enemy remaining force and captured the other remaining half," spoke the Jonin. "Very good, send word to the Raikage in Konoha and Lady Kicho in New Kumo, that we have succeeded in all our objectives," spoke Rukan as he pushed his glasses back up, where the Jonin nodded and quickly left. After which Rukan ordered the new Kumo forces to burn the dead bodies of the dead Oto Nins, and to then head back to Orochimaru's main base and bring the prisoners with them. Konoha, 2 weeks later. 2 weeks after the great battle, the village was now busy with activating, where the people and the shinobis there were helping in clearing out the rubble from destroyed buildings. As well as cleaning out the leftover weapons that had been dropped or broken from the battle and making repairs to buildings that could be salvaged. But even with all of this, Konoha was in pretty bad shape, worse even from the Suna and Oto invasion 10 years ago. 4 days after the battle, the civilians, along with the other population of Konoha, were informed that the enemy had been defeated and that they could return to the village. Naturally, many of families and loved ones were overjoyed when they were reunited with their loved ones, while others cried at hearing how their loved had been killed in battle by the enemy. Among these happy reunions was Lee and Yakumo being reunited with the daughter Fuku, although even happy moments like that, they were joined by sadness, as Yakumo uncle Unkai had been killed during the battle. Even though Yakumo was not very close to her uncle, especially given the fact that he was one of those who supported in having her killed when she didn't have control of her power, it didn't mean that she didn't at least care about him, as he was her uncle after all. Other happy reunions were of Shikamaru, Choji, Shino, being reunited with their own wives, as well as Anko, Iruka and Kurenai being reunited with their children, Hiruzen and Aiko. But like with Yakumo, this was marked with sadness as Neji fiancé, a young Hyuga branch girl, was badly wounded in the battle, but thanks to Tsunade she was no threat of dying, but was in a coma for the time being. Naturally, when the populace saw the new Kumo shinobis, along with the new Kumo airships which had landed in the crater, that Naruto created outside the village when he used his Inazuma lightning flash, as well as heard how new Kumo had arrived and helped the Konoha defenders defeat the enemy forces, many people cheered the new Kumo forces and even sang the Raikage's praises for saving them. But the people's opinion of the Raikage quickly turned when they learned that Naruto was the Raikage. When the civilian population heard this, they couldn't believe that the demon brat was still alive and was the Raikage of New Kumo of all people. As expected, people turned against Naruto for his part in the destruction of their village, as because of the overall battle over 3/4 of Konoha was in ruins now, where most people were forced to live in tents now outside the village. Also, when word spread that Naruto was the Yondaime son, it caused even greater turmoil, as many of those who hated Naruto refused to believe that the demon brat was the son of their hero and greatest Hokage. When people heard about Naruto, several large and angry mobs gathered at the hospital, wanting to kill the demon, while it was still weak and unable to defend himself. Naturally, the Storm, Shock, Bolt shinobis, as well as several other new Kumo shinobis, blocked their path from entering the hospital grounds. Luckily though, before things could get out of hand, 2 large groups made up of members of the Hyuga clan, and the Sarutobi clan, and led by their respected clan heads, arrived at the scene. After which Hinata and Konohamaru quickly took charge of the situation and ordered the mob to disperse and leave. Naturally, most people in the mob refused, but they quickly changed their minds, after one man stepped forward saying he was going to kill the demon, once and for all. But before any of the new Kumo shinobis could stop him, Hinata appeared in front of the man and delivered her Degeki Sendo death strike right into the man's chest, breaking his breastbone and all 24 of his ribs and sending him flying into a large wall directly behind him and making a large dent in it when he hit it. After doing this, Hinata then stated that if anyone tried to hurt Naruto, then they would have to deal with the Hyuga clan and that she would breaking every bone in their bodies if anyone tried to hurt Naruto. Konohamaru also backed up her, where he stated that not only would they have to deal with Hinata and her clan, but also him and his clan. When the mob saw that they were up against, not only the new Kumo shinobis, but also the Hyuga clan and the Sarutobi clan. Along with their clan heads, who were among the strongest shinobis in Konoha, the mob quickly realized that they could not win, and so left. Another big event was after Tsunade had informed the council members about Naruto, the ones who had not taken part in the battle, and who had went with the civilians when they left the village. When the council members heard that Naruto was alive and was the Raikage, they were both shocked and furious at the same time. The shinobi elders were especially surprised when they heard this, where Homura was shocked that Naruto was the Raikage of all people, yet slightly relieved and happy that Naruto was alive. Koharu and Danzo on the other hand, were not only shocked, but angry and worried, as Naruto was now not only alive, but was the leader of another foreign shinobi village. This was of course the worst fear of any shinobi village, to have their Jinchuriki join another shinobi village. This now made Naruto probably the greatest threat to Konoha and to ever exist, as combined the power of the Kyuubi, along with Naruto's two bloodlines, his Sage mode. As well as the amount of power he showed when face Orochimaru and the other coalition leaders, as well as the Sword of Tengu. It made Naruto more dangerous than Madara or even the Kyuubi itself. As the Kyuubi was at least a wild beast, that didn't know how to use its power properly. Unlike Naruto, who did, and unlike Madara, when he revolted against the Shodaime, Naruto didn't stand alone, as he had the backing of a powerful nation, since when Madara revolted he had no one, not even his own clan, to back him up. Later on, about 14 young naive Konoha Chunins, whose heads were still full with words like duty and honor, stormed the hospital and the room that the unconscious Naruto was staying in after his battle. The Chunins in question had orders to arrest Naruto on trumped-up charges, such as the destruction of a third of Konoha and breaking his banishment. Normally the storm nins that were guarding Naruto along with Naruto's commanding officers would have stopped the Chunins. But they did not and allowed the Chunins to enter Naruto's room, as ever since Naruto's battle with Orochimaru, the other leaders of the anti-Konoha coalition and the four Hokages. Naruto wives, the ones who came with him, who were in the room with Naruto, had been in a bad mood. The reason for this was because Naruto wives were furious at how he had ordered them not to help him in his battle, and just sit back and watch him nearly get himself killed. Their moods got even worse over time, as they waited for Naruto to wake up, as none of them could give out to him or yell at him for being such as Baka. The guards and the others of course knew all this and so decided let the Chunins by, hence when the 14 Chunins burst into Naruto's room stating that they were arresting Naruto. The girls defended their husband and at the same time, were able to release their pent-up anger on the foolish Chunins. Needless to say, when Naruto's wives were finished with them, the 14 Chunins were in a worse state than any of the wounded, currently in the hospital. After the Chunins were dealt with, Zhuge Liang had Tsunade call a council meeting, where he then informed them that there would be severe repercussions for what they did, and if Konoha did something like that again, it would be seen as a declaration of war on New Kumo and the Heavenly Alliance, where considering that New Kumo shinobis were guarding most of Konoha. Not to mention, that most of Konoha's shinobis were in no shape or condition to fight, a battle with New Kumo, let alone the Heavenly Alliance, wasn't in the best interest of Konoha right now. Tsunade of course assured Zhuge Liang that the Chunins acted without her orders or her approval, where she then immediately ran an investigation what happened. Later on she learned that the Chunins had been acting on the orders of civilian council member Hojo Akira, who convinced the naive young Chunins that having Naruto arrested was in the best interest of Konoha, as Akira believed that with Naruto under their custody, New Kumo and the Heavenly Alliance wouldn't dare do anything against them. Sadly though for Akira, when Tsunade found out the truth, she had him arrested, for usurping the Hokage's authority, as only the Hokage could order the Konoha shinobis. She also had Akira removed from his position on the council and seized all his assets, and had him placed in prison for what he did. Both Danzo and Koharu surprisingly supported Tsunade's decision, as even though it would weaken him on the council. Both agreed that what Akira did was foolish, as they knew that arresting a ruling Kage from another village, especially one as powerful as New Kumo, would earn the wrath of the New Kumo shinobis, along with Naruto's commanders, where they would attack Konoha in an attempt to rescue Naruto and destroy Konoha in the process. But even after that incident, things in Konoha did not calm down, as there was still a great deal of unrest in the village, where several fights broke out between the New Kumo ninjas and some Konoha ninjas, when some Konoha ninjas insulted Naruto. Also, there were several disputes between the new Kumo shinobis and some civilians, where the civilians would antagonize the new Kumo shinobis by insulting Naruto or throwing this at him, along with other things. This would then normally result in the new Kumo shinobis beating said civilians up. Seeing what was happening, both Zhuge Liang and Tsunade decided to regain control of their forces and people, before more pointless fights broke out between both sides. Tsunade was able to regain order, by declaring martial law, although due to most of her forces being in no condition to be on duty, as most Konoha's remaining shinobis were hospitalized due to injuries that they suffered from battle. Tsunade had to rely on Suna and new Kumo shinobis to help maintain and enforce martial law. She also ordered her remaining on-duty shinobis to not antagonize the new Kumo shinobi. Since if they did, they would find themselves demoted and spending some time in the dentation cells, along with the other prisoners. Zhuge Liang in turn ordered that all new Kumo shinobis to refrain from fighting with the Konoha shinobis, unless they physically attack them. He also ordered them not to respond to the civilians' remarks or their antagonizing tactics, and ordered them to restrain the civilians if they were found breaking curfew or attack them and do nothing more than that. The new Kumo shinobis of course did what they were told, but whenever they did restrain civilians, that threw things at them or resisted them, when the new Kumo shinobis found them breaking curfew. They restrained the civilians a lot more forcefully than was needed, where they would get a few bruises here or there, from being restrained by the new Kumo shinobis. But even with all these measures taken, there were still a few fights that broke out, between the new Kumo shinobis and the Konoha people and some shinobis over how they felt towards Naruto. With the Konoha Council. As of now, the clearing out of the village debris is the main focus, the repairs to the remaining buildings are continuing slowly. Although thankfully food and water supplies have not been effective and there is no shortage, spoke Tsunade, as she finished going over the status of the village. That is all well and good, Hokage-sama, but I believe there is a more important matter at hand, spoke Amiko Taichi. And what would this matter be, council member Taichi? Asked Tsunade, although she already knew what he meant, as it was obvious. You know who I'm referring to, Hokage-sama. We need to do something about that thing at the hospital, said Taichi. That thing that you're referring to is the Raikage of New Kumo and is the one who helped save this village, spoke the annoyed female Hokage. As she could not help but be disgusted at how ungrateful people like Taichi were towards Naruto and New Kumo. But look at what he did to our village. Almost a third of the damage that was done to the village was because of him, spoke Taichi. Not only that, but with Orochimaru and his allies defeated, who to say that the demon and its followers won't turn on us once it have been healed with, spoke Asai Haita. If he wanted to do that, he and his forces would have attacked us at the same time that they attacked Orochimaru and his allies, or even waited till Orochimaru and his allies had killed us all, spoke Hana, as like Tsunade, she was getting tired of these pointless arguments. Maybe he wanted to use us to help him defeat Orochimaru and his allies, where after we defeated him and he recovered and we let our guard, he will turn on us, spoke Ashikaga Shin. TCH, you should think before you speak, council member, because if you did you wouldn't say such stupid and troublesome things like that. Especially if it makes no sense, as why would they even bother doing something like that? When they don't need to, as we're already weak as it is from the battle, and it would be pointless to be doing something like that, as they could easily destroy us now if they wanted to. It would have been a lot easier to simply attack and kill us all, when they attacked Orochimaru and his allies, instead of doing all of this, spoke Shikaku. But even still, we should capture him, now, while he's weakened and we've the chance, spoke Hetia. And look how well that turned out for Akira, when he sent those idiot Chunins to arrest the Raikage on those bogus charges, said Konohamaru with a sneer. He destroyed a third of our village and he broke his banishment, we're in our right, responded Shin. He's a freaking cage now, you idiot. Roared Tsunade, which gives him automatic diplomatic immunity to all charges. As for the village, it was a result of his battle with the 4 revived Hokages. Orochimaru and his allies and I would rather have most of the village destroyed, than have it destroyed entirely. Although I agree that arresting the Raikage is foolish, council member Shin's and the other members' fears are not unfounded, as the Raikage would most likely have ill will towards us, spoke Danzo. And whose fault would that be, Danzo-san, spoke Hinata as glared coldly, at Danzo and the other members of the council who were each somehow involved in Naruto's banishment. That does not matter now, what matters is how we deal with the situation now. Spoke Koharu. Simple, we should kill him, spoke Hetia. Like hell, you will. roared Konohamaru with anger, as he was furious at what he was hearing and was tempted to beat the living hell out of Hetia for saying it. I agree as well, as killing the Raikage would be foolish and only bring down the wrath of New Kumo and the Heavenly Alliance down on our village, spoke Aburame Shibi. At hearing this, even Danzo and Koharu had to agree, although Danzo himself had thought about having Naruto killed, by having one of his operatives disguise as a nurse or doctor and kill Naruto and make it look like his body gave out from exhaustion. Unfortunately for Danzo, that idea wouldn't work, as the New Kumo shinobis wouldn't allow any non-New Kumo medic to go near Naruto. Even Tsunade herself was refused access to enter, to see or check in on Naruto. Not to mention Naruto was under constant guard 24/7, where his wives and bodyguards were in his room at all times and storm nins were guarding all entrance points. This made it impossible to come even close to Naruto in any way, without New Kumo shinobis watching him closely. But we need to do something, cried Taichi. That's enough, roared Tsunade, as she slammed her fist onto the new council table, cracking it. I won't hear any more of this. When my grandfather and great-uncle were brought back by Orochimaru, they spoke how ashamed they were at us. The Yondaime himself was even disgusted at how we treated his son, and you all wanted to shame ourselves even further by having him killed or imprisoned, because you're all afraid at what he might do, cried Tsunade. We're only thinking of what's best for Konoha, Tsunade, responded Koharu. TSK, if that was the case, then you would have never banished Naruto in the first place and followed the Yondaime wish and regarded Naruto as the hero that he was, instead of beating him and treating him as an outcast. As if we had, it would most likely be Konoha instead of Kumo that would be flourishing, spoke Tsunade. That is conjecture at the very best, Hokage-san, spoke Sasuke. Maybe, but we would have been in a hell of a lot better situation than we are in now, replied Tsunade as she narrowed her eyes. Hence there will be no more arguments about this, and if I find out that there are any more attempts on Naruto life or attempts to hold him against his will by anyone, I will personally skin him alive and have their hide pinned on my wall. Is that clear? Well now, I'm glad to see that there are at least still some people with some brains and common sense, spoke Jiraiya, who was sitting on the windowsill, watching Tsunade and the council argue amongst themselves. Jiraiya, spoke Tsunade in surprise at seeing her former teammate, who disappeared from the village, 2 days after the Battle of Konoha. Where the hell have you been? Ah, Haim, you missed me, I'm touched, spoke Jiraiya, with a cheesy grin. Cut the act, Jiraiya, now tell me where the hell have you been? Asked the annoyed Hokage. Okay, Haim yesh. You really need to lighten up a bit, or else you've even more wrinkles on you than you already have now, said Jiraiya with a smirk, when he saw Tsunade glare at him angrily. But after which, he then quickly became serious. Okay, for the past few days I have traveling around, gathering intel on the other villages in case some of the smaller villages decided to make a move on us, in our weakened condition. As well as gathering intel on what's going on with Oto, Kiraiwa and the others, answered Jiraiya. So has anything happened that we should be concerned about? Asked Inoiki. A lot actually, replied Jiraiya, gaining everyone's attention, where he then continued. Both Kiri and Oto, along with their home countries Ta no Kuni and Mizu no Kuni, have been conquered. At hearing this, the entire room gasped in shock. Conquered? By who? Asked a surprised Homura. By the Heavenly Alliance. It seems that when Naruto and his forces were helping us deal with Orochimaru and his coalition, he had his other forces launched a coordinated invasion on both villages and their host countries, replied Jiraiya. At hearing this, Tsunade and the council were stunned at hearing that 2 of their enemies along with their home country had just been conquered by Naruto's alliance. When exactly did they fall, Jiraiya? Asked Tsunade. Both invasions began at the same time as our battle with Orochimaru's coalition, where Oto and Ta no Kuni fell within 2 days along with Kiri. While Mizu no Kuni fell on the 3rd, answered Jiraiya, shocking everyone again. But how could the Heavenly Alliance conquer 2 shinobi villages and their host countries, within just a few days? Even if they had surprise on their side, they shouldn't have conquered both countries so easily and quickly, spoke the Anbu commander. Well, it seems that Naruto has been planning these invasions for several months or more, because you see he had help from the rebel factions in Mizu no Kuni and Ta no Kuni. In Mizu no Kuni he launched a 2-prong invasion of Mizu no Kuni, from the north and the south. In the north, an armada of 700 ships from New Kumogaku, Yukigaku, Shimo no Kuni, Shimogaku, Yuki, Haru no Kuni, Yu no Kuni and Kaminari no Kuni. Led by 4 fortress ships belong to Yuki, Haru no Kuni and Yukigakure and Naruto's command ship, the same one that he picked up Kurani and her team in, a while back. There they destroyed Kiri's remaining fleet stationed there and its fortress in the north in one single go. At the same time as that, the second invasion, an armada numbering about 500 ships from New Kumo, Kaminari no Kuni and Cha no Kuni, Suki no Kuni, Umi no Kuni and Getshugakure. There they encountered one of Mizu no Kuni's fleets patrolling their southern shores, where all 100 ships were destroyed by the 4 fortress ships from Kaminari no Kuni, which were leading the armada, in just a few minutes. Once both armadas landed with their invasion forces, they quickly moved through the country, not giving the Mizu no Kuni forces or the remaining Kiri forces a chance to defend themselves. At the same time as the invasions, the rebel factions worked together to disrupt communication between the Kiri and Mizu no Kuni forces, as well as attack several of their bases, fortresses and castles at once. Also a revolt by the civilian population erupted in Kiri, supported by the shinobi rebel factions, where by the second day with the help of the shinobis of the Heavenly Alliance, Kiri fell and was quickly followed up by Mizu no Kuni itself. As it seems on the third day after the invasion, the Ushugi samurai clan of Mizu no Kuni secretly joined with the rebel factions and took over the capital, with no bloodshed and handed it over to the Heavenly Alliance army when they arrived. The Mizu Daimyo himself was killed the Ushugi clan head Kenshin, the famed Senso no Kami, where they then replaced Mizu Daimyo with his younger cousin, spoke Jiraiya, where he continued on before anyone could interrupt him. Also at the same time Ta no Kuni was invaded by 2 separate armies belonging to New Kumo, Yugakure, Kaminari no Kuni from Yu no Kuni, where with the help of the Fuma clan, along with the other rebel clans native to Ta no Kuni. Naruto forces knew the locations of all of Orochimaru's bases in Ta no Kuni and took them over without much trouble. Along with that, his forces easily took over Ta no Kuni itself with the help of the Ta Daimyo's nephew Prince Mochi and his allies, whereas of now Prince Mochi is the new ruler of Ta no Kuni and will be crowned the new Daimyo of Ta no Kuni next week, said Jiraiya. After hearing all this, there was much worried muttering among the council members, as they didn't know what this exactly meant for Konoha, as some feared that Naruto was planning to conquer Konoha next. Is there anything else that happened involving the Heavenly Alliance? Asked Tsunade. Plenty, as there was another attack, where New Kumo launched 3 separate, simultaneous amphibious assaults on Tsuchi no Kuni and it was 3 major military docks, where they destroyed them and their fleets in one go. Also as well Takagakure, Hidden Waterfall, and Hoshigakure, Hidden Star, launched a large-scale raid on Kusagakure, Hidden Grass where they attacked the village and did considerable amount of damage to it. The most notable being, that Kusa research lab for all their poisons and toxins was completely destroyed, before the Hoshi and Taki shinobis left the village, spoke Jiraiya. But why didn't they invade them, as if they invaded both Mizu no Kuni and Ta no Kuni along with their shinobi villages? Surely they could have taken over Tsuchi no Kuni and Kusa no Kuni along with their shinobis villages, spoke Shin. My guess would be unlike them, there are no rebel factions fighting against the ruling government, where the Heavenly Alliance would have to garrison a large army there to keep control of the countries and village. Upon which they would have to fight constant rebellions, as the people would resent them, especially Iwa. As once they learned Naruto's full heritage, you can beat, they won't be happy at being conquered by the Heavenly Alliance, which is led by the Yondaime Hokage's son. Where unlike Ta no Kuni and Mizu no Kuni, or their shinobi villages he helped remove the corrupt tyrannical rules of Orochimaru, the Mizu Daimyo and the Godai Mizukage. Hence Naruto and the Heavenly Alliance are seen as liberators, where the majority of the people will favor them, and the new ruling parties will be pro-Heavenly Alliance and owe it and Naruto a big favor. Meaning the Heavenly Alliance influence will grow, as both countries and villages will relay a lot on the Heavenly Alliance to recover economically, financially and militarily. By which point it be highly likely that they will join or ally themselves with the Heavenly Alliance, increasing its strength even further, spoke Jiraiya. As he had to admit Naruto had got a lot smarter in the last 10 years, as he had basically defeated 2 of major enemies and turned them into his new allies by helping to put in new friendlier ruling groups. They expanded their borders and control, while we were fighting for our lives, stated Danzo angrily, as like most people on the council he knew that this would put Konoha at a greater disadvantage, while putting New Kumo and the Heavenly Alliance at an even greater advantage. But won't the Heavenly Alliance have trouble keeping control the countries and villages from the returning Kiri and Oto forces, as I don't think Orochimaru would simply allow the Heavenly Alliance to take control of his own country. Also, there would most likely be many high-ranking Kiri shinobis in the retreating army, who would take control of the Kiri army and use it to try and take control of Kiri and Mizu no Kuni, spoke Yakumo. Not going to happen, as after taking control of Oto and Ta no Kuni, the shinobis of the Heavenly Alliance ambushed Orochimaru and his forces when they crossed the border. Unfortunately, Orochimaru and Kabuto escaped again, but all their remaining forces that survived the battle were captured or wiped out by the Alliance shinobis. The Kiri forces that retreated were all captured as well, along with the Kiri armada off the coast of Hai no Kuni. As it seems that Naruto took back his clan's former homeland Izu no Kuni, Whirlpool Country, and built a secret naval base there, where he then had a fleet of ships belonging to Kaminari no Kuni and New Kumo, along with 3 more fortress ships belonging to New Kumo stationed and hidden there. So that when the Kiri armada landed with the Kiri invasion force, the New Kumo and Kaminari no Kuni fleet launched and surrounded the Kiri armada, with their backs against the beachhead, giving them no choice but to surrender, where when the retreating Kiri forces arrived at the beachhead, they were also surrounded by the forces Naruto had stationed in Nami no Kuni, Wave Country, who came up from behind them and surrounded them, where with their armada captured and being surrounded and with their cage dead, they surrendered without a fight, spoke Jiraiya. So the Heavenly Alliance really does have more of those fortress ships and those underwater ships, spoke Inoiki. 12 fortress ships and 30 of those submarines to be precise, and that is what we know of. For all we know, they could have more those fortress ships and submarines, spoke Jiraiya, which didn't settle the council concerns about the Heavenly Alliance, as the idea of the Heavenly Alliance having even more of those underwater ships and fortress ships than they had now was nerve-wracking to say the least. Regardless, it seems that the Raikage has gotten rid of most our enemies for us, spoke the Anbu commander. Some of them, yay, but if you think Orochimaru finished, then you be wrong. Even though Ta no Kuni has fallen along with all the Oto bases there, Orochimaru's organization still exists, as he has other bases in other countries. The Hanya clan and Kusa won't bother us for a long while, as the Hanya clan took heavy losses in the battle, while Kusa forces along with the village itself took equally heavy losses, where the village suffered heavy damage and lost their poison research lab. Kiri is gone with it being conquered by the Heavenly Alliance, although Iwa is still a threat, as even though they took heavy losses, their military strength is still strong, as they didn't commit their full military strength to the battle. Hence they're still a threat, although they will most likely consolidate the defenses and position for a while after they elect a new Tsuchikage, spoke Jiraiya. So for now we're safe, spoke Konohamaru. For now at least, replied Jiraiya. But what about the demon? Spoke Taichi. At hearing this, Jiraiya narrowed his eyes, as he was getting pretty sick of dealing with these bigots on the council. If you got any sense whatsoever, you do exactly what she said and leave the kid alone, especially if don't want to have all hell coming down on us, and I don't mean that just because he is the leader of New Kumo and the Heavenly Alliance. Then what do you mean that, Jiraiya-sama? Asked Shibi. What I mean is that Naruto is almost worshipped in New Kumo and in Kaminari no Kuni, as he is the hero of both the country and the village, as he led the rebels to victory over the Godime Raikage. He rebuilt their village and restored the country and reunited the two sides after the civil war and formed the Heavenly Alliance. He defended them when he destroyed the Kiri and Mizu no Kuni armada, when it arrived near the end of the civil war, and made New Kumo and Kaminari no Kuni stronger than they ever have been in their history. Hell, they're even calling his rule the age of the Rokudaime Raikage, the golden age of New Kumo and Kaminari no Kuni. Hence, if anything were to happen to Naruto, they would instantly blame us, and every single shinobi, samurai and soldier in New Kumo and Kaminari no Kuni would come down like a tidal wave of fury on us and would burn the village to the ground. Where if they don't get us, then you can beat your ass, that the other countries and shinobi villages that regard Naruto as a hero will, and I need not tell you that all those countries and villages are all with the Heaven Alliance or are allied with it, spoke Jiraiya. At hearing this, the civilian member grumbled and growled, as they knew that what Jiraiya said was true, as given the current state the Heavenly Alliance would easily destroy Konoha. Jiraiya, have you contacted the Toads yet and asked them why they lied to you about Naruto being alive? Asked Tsunade. No, I haven't, as I haven't had time to make contact with any of them, replied Jiraiya, as he decided that he might as well get answer now, where he then got off the windowsill and bit his finger and summoned a large amount of his chakra and cried, Kuchio's no jutsu, summoning technique. After which there was a small puff of smoke, where once it dissipated a small elder-like toad carrying a small wooden cane and where a small grey cloak appeared. So Jiraiya-chan, you finally decided to summon me. I'm surprised you didn't summon me sooner. Then you know why I summon you here, Pa? Asked Jiraiya. Of course you summoned me here, because you want to know why we lied to you about Naruto-chan being alive, replied Fukasaku. How do you know? Asked the surprised Jiraiya. Gambunta and Gamakichi told me about the battle and how Naruto-chan finally revealed himself to all of you, spoke Fukasaku. So why did you lie to me, about not being able to reverse summon Naruto and telling me later on that he was dead? Asked Jiraiya. Because he asked us to. Answered Fukasaku. He asked you to. Repeated Tsunade in disbelief. Yes, after he was discovered by Mitsuhide and Sayuri and got rid of the chakra-suppressing seal and the curse seal that prevented him from talking about Konoha. He summoned me and asked me not to reverse summon him, when you asked me. He also asked me later to tell you, that he was dead after his little run-in with the Akatsuki, spoke Fukasaku. But why did you agree, Pa? I'm his godfather. I had a right to know where he was and if he was alive or dead, ow. Spoke Jiraiya, before he cried out in pain, when Fukasaku smacked him on the head with his cane. What the hell was that for, ow? Cried Jiraiya, before he was hit on the head again by Fukasaku with his cane. You know full well what was that for. You call yourself his godfather, when you don't even know the meaning of the word. After you left Naruto-chan to fend for himself for 12 years, I thought I taught you better than that, spoke Fukasaku angrily at his former pupil. Upon hearing this, Jiraiya flinched, at hearing his former teacher scold him like he did when he was pupil. Pa, you know that I'm not the settled-down type and I was never exactly the parental role model. I wouldn't have made a good parent for the kid. You could have at least tried to raise him, or at the very least have gone to visit him and check on him every once in a while, instead of just leaving him and never once going to see him. You often told me that Minato was like a son to you, meaning that Naruto was like a grandson, and yet you never even once went to see him, rounded Fukasaku, furiously. At this Jiraiya lowered his head in shame, as he knew that Fukasaku was right. Quite frankly, when we heard from Naruto-chan everything that happened to him over the years, many of the toads along with Ma and myself were tempted to come to this village and flatten it or at the very least sever all ties, along with you Jiraiya, spoke Fukasaku. As he was indeed ashamed at how Jiraiya tossed aside his reasonability as Naruto's godfather and surrogate grandson. Naturally, when Jiraiya heard this, he was shocked. You're annulling my contract. Spoke Jiraiya, with surprise. I said we were tempted, but if it wasn't for the many years of you as our summoner and our past friendships, we would, said Fukasaku, after which turned to face Tsunade and the council. Also, as of this moment, the Toad's alliance with Konoha is annulled, although Jiraiya can still summon us and we will fight by him, but as far as we're concerned, Konoha stands alone, even if Jiraiya summons us to defend Konoha. We'll never defend it ever again, nor will we be used to fight against Naruto-chan or New Kumo and the Heavenly Alliance, as we will not be used to fight against one of our own summoners, spoke Fukasaku. You're abandoning us, said Shin in shock, as the Toads were among Konoha's greatest defenders and allies. That is what I basically said, as we Toads do not take well to our summoners or the children of a former summoners being wrongfully persecuted and beaten, and it no more different than when this village abandoned Naruto-chan, spoke the elder Toad sage, after which he then said his goodbyes to Jiraiya and then left. Soon after getting over the shock of the Toads turning their backs on him, Tsunade called the council meeting to an end, where all the council members soon left, where within the next few hours, everyone in Konoha would know what Naruto and the Heavenly Alliance had done. That will be it for this video. If you want more, comment down below, like, subscribe. And see you guys later.